and that energy in its undifferentiated form is whole and is one, and you can't see it and you can't test it and taste it and smell it. But once it becomes refracted, then it takes on all these other forms. So every other form, whether it's electricity, heat, light, or sound, these are all subsets of that one energy. And a very good analogy to help grasp that is the light coming from the sun is invisible. We can't see it, we can't taste it, we can't smell it, can't do anything with it. But once it impinges upon or excites a molecule or an atom, well, then we can see it in the form of color and heat and a reflected light. And another analogy is the fundamental in music. Let's take the scale on a note of C. C all by itself is just a vibration, doesn't really mean anything, but as it refracts into its overtones or harmonics and partials, all the other notes of that scale come out of the note C. So everything is held latent until it's disturbed and becomes refracted.
Okay, I noticed that you said refracted instead of like fractal or partials, which you have, it said you could change it. And that's the key to what I really want to get to today. I have a couple other questions related to that a little bit further on. Let me kind of keep going here.
Well,
it says, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, refraction is not the same thing as fractals. Fractal is a mathematical construct, but refraction, if you take the sunlight and shine it through a prism, it refracts into a spectrum of colors. So refraction is a process or a dynamic.
I see. So it's not fractaling at all. It's actually just a projection or an effect.
Well, it breaks down the original chord into its discrete parts.
Okay, yeah, that's over my head, but I'm sure some of our listeners are going to be curious now. Okay. Vibrations always behave according to the same laws and principles as what we just discussed. So I'm going to go on to, we have a lot of musicians and some scientists listening here at Freedom Slips, and I'd like to get into the musical universe and the molecules. Can you explain the harp octaves? I saw this in the Universal Laws Never Before Revealed by Keeley. It says it had like a little chart, and it mentioned in the Walter Russell's documents that, for example, cubing metals becomes a higher octave, and past etheric, which I'm wondering if that's a liquid, becomes radiation or death. Go ahead.
I'm not 100% certain what you're asking, but if there is a division of matter and energy, and at the lowest level we have mass or molecules like a brick or your desk or your computer. It's made out of molecules and atoms, and we go up from there and we get into the strictly atoms, like say a pure piece of gold. When we break, and above that is what they call this etheric level, which in today's terms is our quantum universe. It's made of all these small, tiny subatomic quantum particles. So in Russell's paradigm, you can begin at the void, which is a dipolar state, which is the undifferentiated mind state. We just talked about being God, undifferentiated.
Right.
And that can, once it polarizes, it becomes, day and night. Once it becomes white and black or hot and cold, then that causes an eternal motion that as it concentrates becomes the etheric level and becomes the atomic level, which becomes the molecular level. So all these levels are integrated, which is one way of saying spirit or God or mind is in every atom and every molecule, no matter where it is. And that kind of gives you a background. Okay.
Yeah. Again, to the heart of the show, at one point during your lectures, I saw you say that kind of like it made me think of string theory. What it was is you were saying that if you could find a concordance in the different vibrations, then you would actually be able to somehow, if you could pick up their frequency, you might be able to be in concordance with that other frequency. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, insofar as your question goes, everything vibrates, so if you want to be in tune with something other than yourself, then, like players in an orchestra, the conductor, the first thing he does, he plays a pitch pipe, and everybody tunes their instrument to that pitch. So when they get all done tuning, then they're all in tune with each other. So we can do the same. We can do the same thing. We deal with people all day long in situations, and we can either be in tune with those people or that situation, or we can choose to not be in tune.
Right. How can we find someone's frequency? Just by finding common ground? Or is there actually a way to tune in on someone's frequency?
Well, everybody's got the same fundamental tone or chord, but everybody manifests what appears to be a different chord. So we deal with all these different personalities. Well, in the final analysis, everybody has the same base chord, which is love. So if you're in a loving state, other people of the similar state are, when they know it, a lot of people just deny it. But that's what brings people together. It's this law of attraction to the principle of harmony and love. So if you're not in tune with somebody and you really want to be, well, you have to go to that still, quiet place in your heart, which is love. And they will choose or not to resonate with that.
I see. I guess what I was leading up to is there's some people, especially that I've been talking to, amongst my circles, that are a little concerned about the state of affairs today. And seems to be two groups. There seems to be the group that is love, light, and energy, and says don't give the negative any vibration or any thought. And then there's the other people who are reading the news and, have a little bit more of that fear back, and including myself, are concerned about what things might happen if we don't take some actions to create a better frequency. So how would we be able to relate to people who we don't see eye to eye with?
Well, like you say, there's two sides to that question. One side says love needs no defense. So we sit here and be in love and we ignore the insane illusion that's going on around us, and we don't need defense against it because we won't know it's there and it won't know we're here. Well, that's one viewpoint. And it's a good one. There's a lot to be said for that. I have seen things like that in my own life, and it's kind of astounding when you realize that, gee, I didn't have to defend myself. It just deflected away and it was gone.
That's what I'm wondering. Okay.
On the other hand, we live in this world. I mean, we drive cars, we get driver's license, we deal with money, we go to work, we go to, for instance.
No.
If you were a farmer, you would say, well, I'm going to sit here in love and light on the porch, and the fields will plant themselves, and God will grow the produce. So we have to be involved. That's what I'm saying. We have to be involved to whatever degree you want to be involved.
Is there any way, if I'm forced to deal with this, that I can somehow find a resonance? Is that just finding common ground and trying to reason with them, or is there something more earthly resonance that I could do to make the odds more in my favor?
Yeah, you be in a loving state. You know who you are. You know what you want. You know what your intentions are, and you say, "Well, I can choose to get down here in the street and fight it out with these bullies," which is not very smart. Or we can build a whole new future. We can just more or less ignore those guys as long as they don't get in our face, and we're going to build a whole new future. And the type of energy that they have is not coincident. It's not harmonic with what you want, because what you want is love and light, progress and prosperity, and what they want is destruction. So if enough of us focus on our future and we build this beautiful future, then, those guys will just fade away, which is what's happening, by the way. Because we're not supporting them. If you get down there and pay them taxes and get down on your knees and kiss their feet and everything, that's not what you want.
Right. So to make them go, I hear you, and I think all of our listeners kind of understand where you're coming from. So yeah, okay, I'm going to move on from there, but I'm sure that if we can open the phone lines later, this will probably be revisited. Have you heard of Piezoelectricity principles, and do they work in concordance with your own principles? I'm not familiar with them personally.
Well, piezoelectricity is a natural phenomenon. So if you put pressure on a crystal, different kinds of crystals react in different ways. You put pressure on a crystal, it will create an electric current. And that's all that means. There's other methods. You can heat them up and they'll create current, or different methods of doing that. But fundamentally, it's because when you put pressure on a crystal, for instance, you're adding energy to the crystal. And since these electrons are sitting there in a balanced state, they start to move, according to the standard model. I got other ideas, but the standard model, you add energy, you're going to get more energy out. So that's what's happening.
Okay. And that kind of takes me to, and I hope I have the right term, I am a name giver, hammer boarding. I noticed also in the lectures that I watched that you were one of the only, as far as I know, and tell me if I'm wrong, you were the only person to have worked on this only patented Keeley motor. Is that correct?
Probably up to that point, because the original Keeley motor, first off, Keeley made, according to the literature, 129 models. And that was in the 1860s and 1870s. All those models are missing except one. At the time that I said that. And a friend of mine owned it. He bought it from the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia in the 1940s. And he protected this little motor all these years. And in the 90s, I guess it was, visiting with him in his house, we got to playing around with this motor.
Awesome.
Since then, the man has died, and the motor's disappeared, and everything he owned has disappeared.
Imagine that.
We don't know where the motor is now, and whoever's got it has probably been playing with it also if they haven't sold it for scrap.
I am so sorry to hear that. I did not know that. I'm sorry. But maybe you can tell us about, you said that it worked on water. You put it in your bathtub. It actually came alive. It came alive. And when you said that, that got me sparking like all these different thoughts about where we've been, this technology, how did they ever come up with this? Are these guys aliens from the future that came to give us this? To where are we going with it? Are they creating wormholes? My mind was exploding. So maybe you can back up a little bit and talk about, you can tell me a little, and our listeners, about the Keeley motor.
Well, we can get carried away, and my intent and purpose and all these years has been, okay, I'm going to explore all these far out things, but I am going to keep my feet on the ground.
Exactly.
Okay? Because, we can get lost. There's too much stuff out there to dig into. A lot of this stuff, aliens and whatever, we don't have any real facts. It's all conjecture.
That's right.
And I like to stay away from those things because we don't have any facts. Now, in the Keeley devices, and they're all somewhat the same, they had common threads throughout. And I'll give you an analogy to give you an idea what I meant by coming alive.
Great.
A couple years ago, I wanted to take up violin, learn how to play a violin. So I got one and played around with it, and I really wasn't making much progress. And a friend of mine came to visit, and he's a university music professor. And he said he heard one note out of that violin, and he says, "Here, let me tune that for you." And he did. And he tuned this thing to perfection. And when he handed it to me, and I had it in my hands, it was like this thing had come alive. Because it was resonant, it was sensitive, it was just sitting there vibrating in my hands.
What did he resonate it to? Did he resonate it to the earth pitch, or do you know?
Well, to his own ideas of pitch and the resonant frequencies of the violin structure.
The structure. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, everything vibrates, and these music instruments, like the violin, has been tweaked on for centuries. And as they built newer models, you know, each model became more in tune with itself. And so now we have these really nice instruments. A couple hundred years ago, they didn't sound anything like what we have today. And it's a matter of tweaking the materials and the structure and the shape and the size, and then you put the strings on it. It's like a wine glass. If you play the right pitch, the wine glass will all of a sudden go into responsive resonance, and if you keep playing the tone and you get enough amplitude to it, the glass will break. So the same thing with the violin. It has its own natural pitch, and you could theoretically destroy a violin by playing the same pitch at it.
Wow.
But we don't really want to do that because we want to, use them. But the same thing applies to everything, and that's how Keeley eventually learned how to release all this energy that he was using in his inventions. He figured out that, we could resonate a molecule at its pitch, and the molecule will break apart, thus releasing lots of energy.
Excellent. Okay, and that takes me back. I kind of skipped over it. I'm sorry about the hammer boarding. Could you explain that process a little bit?
Water hammer?
Water hammering, yes. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think you're thinking about the bad guys. Water hammer is... It was only becoming understood in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, because they didn't really have any huge city water supplies. They were just starting to build these huge water supplies and piping and everything. And they began blowing up the water pipes underground and in people's homes. And so there was a big thing going on about how to understand that. And I think that's when Keeley got interested, because he saw all that energy being released. And he said, well, what is this all about? And I believe that's what he eventually adapted into his original motors. Water hammer is where you have a stream of water under pressure moving through a pipe, and then with a valve, you shut that stream off abruptly. The quicker you shut the stream off, the bigger this water hammer is going to be. And from my investigation of it, there's two kinds of water hammer. So we've got a straight pipe with water flowing through it, and in the middle of this pipe, we've got a valve. We instantly shut the valve. On the upstream side of that valve, the water wants to continue to move, but it can't. So there's this momentum energy built up in the water, and it slams against the valve, and then creates a shock wave, and the shock wave goes back up the pipe. So and you can hear that, And that's the upstream side. The downstream side, when you shut that stream off, the water wants to continue moving, so it creates a partial vacuum between the water and the valve. And that vacuum will slam, nature doesn't like a vacuum, so that water will slam back against the valve and cause another type of water hammer. So there's these two phenomena going on. And in the quantum world, or even in the, like boats, propellers and boats, if you slice the water fast enough, it will create this vacuum. And the collapse of that vacuum releases all kinds of energy. They call that cavitation. And it's one of the processes used to release energy in these atoms and molecules.
This is the things that possibly CERN is working on, I would assume. Okay.
Well, I think CERN is, that's not what they're working on, but.
Okay, good to know. Okay, I know that's not your specialty, I won't even go there, but that makes me think of the water hammering. You said it opened up a vacuum. I'm wondering where this energy is going. Is it opening, what's it opening up? Where's it where's it going? But over my head, if you want to elaborate on that, I'll give you a minute, otherwise I will move on.
Well, if we're not talking alien science here. We're talking just basic physics. If you create a vacuum wants to collapse. And if there's something around the vacuum that is collapsible, then it will collapse. And you will have a spontaneous eruption of energy. You start getting into quantum physics and it gets really complicated down on those levels. But when you start with a molecular substance like water, and you draw a vacuum in that water very quickly, we say we have a vacuum, but it's not a true vacuum. It's filled up with water vapor, and it's filled up with dissociated water molecules. So anytime you're breaking up molecules or breaking up atoms, you're getting a tremendous release of energy. And it's that energy release in cavitation that has interested so many people, because there's more energy coming out of there than they use to create and collapse the vacuum. And they say, well, where's this energy coming from? And they don't even stop to think that, gee, there was energy put into those atoms and put into those molecules when they were formed. Well, that's the energy that's being released. It was put in there millions of years ago or whenever it was put in there. And with this method and similar methods, you can release that energy.
Excellent. It's fascinating to me. Okay. Have you heard the term Terra Earth? I remember seeing headlines in the newspaper around maybe Thanksgiving 3 years ago, since we were talking about CERN, that they had actually been able to make a particle travel faster than light. Have you heard of the term Tetra Earth?
Never heard of that term, but I have heard of the Higgs boson that they keep looking for.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. If there was a sympathetic vibration, which I and most have experienced, for example, would I be incorrect in saying, if I hear someone else's conversation when I'm on the phone, that I am at the same frequency as one of the callers, or both of them, and that's why I'm hearing that conversation?
Well, how are you hearing it? Through another telephone or through your head?
Yeah. Well, no, literally. I mean, sometimes, we get cell phone lines crossing, or I have this weird computer that sometimes it just picks up conversations out of the blue and I have to turn it off.
Well, a lot of that's what they call crosstalk, and it's a well-known electronics phenomena. You're getting interference from another circuit, and it's no big deal. It's well known. It's well understood. Sympathetic vibration means this. By the way, Keely developed this field called sympathetic vibratory physics in the 1870s, and we never found his writings or his books, but through the literature we've pieced this thing together. In today's world, they call that quantum entanglement. So they don't refer to Keely's work because we don't have it to refer to. So they created these new terms to label this phenomena, which Keely called sympathetic vibration. Now, sympathetic vibration is, if you take one tuning fork and another tuning fork and they're both tuned to the same pitch, if you strike one, the other one will respond to it. It's as simple as that.
Can you tell the listeners the story about the tuning fork that was taken out of the room and what happened?
Well, there's a story in the literature where Keely had a room and he put 1,000 tuning forks in one room, and they were all tuned to the same pitch. So he went outside the room with another tuning fork, with the 1,001 tuning fork, and he struck it, and he stuck it through a hole in the wall into the room where the other tuning forks were, and they all began to sound and resonate in response to his tuning fork. And Newtonian physics says you can't do that because there's only so much energy in the first tuning fork, and if you spread it out over 1,000 tuning forks and so much volume of air, that's not even possible.
Right, because it would fractal out, it would disperse.
Well, it diminished according to the square law and all that garbage. But when quantum entanglement talks about two atoms or two photons or whatever that are resonant to each other, that are sympathetic to each other, and these two photons are at a distance from each other, which is now up to 1 kilometer or longer. And if you strike one or you excite one, the other one responds. And they can't understand what is the connecting link between these two photons. Well, we also know in quantum mechanics that every atom, every molecule is made of atoms, every atom is made out of electrons, and every electron is made out of photons. Well, if two photons can be stimulated at a distance from each other, why can't all these electrons that are in close proximity be stimulated in the same way, exactly the same way? So the mode of communication between the two distant photons or the plethora of photons in a tuning fork is, according to Keeley, was what he called the connecting link. And this connecting link he learned to manipulate. So that's why he said, if you don't work with sympathetic vibration or quantum entanglement, then you can't run his machines. In other words, they are predicated on those natural principles that govern that phenomena.
I love that. Don't you just love that?
Yeah. So what's a photon? Photon's light. And every atom is made of photons. So everything is really made out of light. You're just looking at it different. So it's a light universe. It's made out of light, and which is what Russell kept saying over and over and over again. And people don't see that, so they didn't know what he was talking about. Well, everything's made out of photons, so there you are.
Right. So, okay, that kind of brings me back to the harp, the Walter Russell, I don't know, like on page 13 or something, I don't have it in front of me. It had a picture of this harp where it went from like octave levels, and then that kind of made me think of your round molecule display where you said if you can find the common denominator, you can find that link or that string. Go ahead and explain.
Well, Keeley, we just talked about the connecting link, and the connecting link in his terminology is the term sympathy. Now we're using the term sympathy and sympathetic in a science physics sense, not in a psychological sense. So when two tuning forks are sympathetic to each other, it can be said that there's a sympathy between them, right? Yeah. You get that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I'm getting away from your original question here. So everything's, if you take a low frequency, like let's say the note C on a piano keyboard, if you open the keyboard like a grand piano, you can see all these wires stretching across there. Right. And if you sound one note, it doesn't matter what note it is, there are other notes within that same piano which you can hear resonate to that lower tone. Well, what causes that is what they call partials or harmonics, overtones. And they're made up arithmetically. If you divide it by 2, you get the octave. So every C is going to respond to one degree or another if it is finely tuned. And so the same thing applies to spheres, like Keeley used all these spheres and he activated them with violins. It's all in the notes in the arithmetic at that point. And this sympathy, this sympathetic connection, because that's the transfer of energy. And before we get too far along here, sympathy is just a synonym for love.
Aww.
So the whole universe is activated upon the principle of love, and that's the connecting link that connects all these photons and all these electrons and all these tuning forks is sympathy, which is love.
Dale, right now, before we go further, can you just please plug your website and where people can find you? Because, it's just mind-blowing. It really is. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, I'm going to let you plug away on some stuff right now.
The website is svpwiki.com. And that's S as in Sam, V as in Victor, P as in Peter, wiki, WIKI.com. And that's a wiki, it's a content management software where we've been for the past 4+ years pouring in this knowledge as much as we can. All the original historical documents we found about Keeley and all the modern correspondences to what he was doing It's really interesting. We're finding more and more now modern terms that describe the things he did, because Keeley had a real problem. He was too far ahead of his time. The electron wasn't even acknowledged till after 20 years after he did his work, and he was working on quantum phenomena, which is smaller than electron. So he had to invent a lot of words to describe what he was dealing with. And that's been a problem. The jargon's been a problem. But we've been finding more and more synonyms in the modern, actually it's the highly academic papers where I'm finding this stuff. You can't find it in the general documentation. And so that's beginning to help us understand what this man was doing and give us some clues about what we can do with it too, because he did some feats in physics that they have yet to replicate today.
Just amazing. That's what makes me think, they were so amazing. I just wonder where they came from. But anyway, we won't get into that. What I am curious about is not very many people know about who, like this whole group of scientists worked together. I don't even want to call them scientists. They were mind-blowing appliers. Like Edward Casey worked with Tesla, and they both worked with Keeley. Who else was in this group? I mean, it's amazing to me that I was able to find, thank God, on whatever it is, the universal one, the stuff on Scribe to lead me to this point today.
Well, it's a complex structure as near as I can figure. First off, in those days, in the 1800s, people were not illiterate. They were highly educated. In fact, there's a quiz floating around the internet someplace. I think it's a third grade test that they gave in 1885. If you had 8 or 10 years of university today, you could not answer that test. So these people were incredibly educated. There was Keeley, Edison, Helmholtz, Tesla, Casey, Russell. Lots and lots of people had gotten their education through that system, which was a holistic system. When you learned science in those days, they used to call it natural philosophy. So they covered a lot of fields. They weren't specialized. So somewhere around 1900, between 1900 and 1920, let's say, some influences came into our system and says, okay, we've got everything monopolized now. We don't want to be threatened. So let's start dumbing down the education system. And that's been studied out and reported on through a congressional report, by the way, called Power Wars. Gives a lot of details. A book by that title, The Power Wars.
Write it down.
And so they began dumbing down everybody so that no more geniuses would come about and threaten the monopolies. So when we hear about these geniuses, we think, oh my gosh, they must have come from Sirius or Venus or someplace. No, they came out of our own school systems, which we no longer have, and that's why we can't recognize it for what it is.
Exactly. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for clearing that up for me. Okay, wonderful. Let's see where I'm so low. I just completely derailed my whole thing. I'm back to sympathetic vibration here in my notes. If there was a sympathetic vibration, which I did that one, okay. I hear in practice in meditation that condensing, some call self-centering, creates balance. Is that true? Would you find that you can create your own balance by meditation?
Well, let's look at it a little bit different.
Okay.
We spoke a little while ago about being in harmony, being in a state of love. Well, every atom and molecule and photon and subquantum particle, all of these things are in a form of harmony. Else they couldn't persist from moment to moment. So this sympathetic connection between all things is a state of harmony or concordance. And that's what we are on the inside. That's what we are spiritually or mentally in the undifferentiated state, because we're an expression of that original undifferentiated state. Our egos, however, get all these weird ideas and crazy opinions and says, no, I'm incompetent and I'm dumb and I'm stupid. I'm not as smart as those guys. So we start introducing these negative thoughts. When as we are a thought in the mind of God. So a thought in the mind of God can't be anything but harmonious and concordant and loving. That's what we really are. So when you meditate, what actually happens is you start shutting off that ego intellectual mind that's telling you all this nonsense. And as you let go of those negative thoughts, then there's room for this positive expression of what you really are to manifest, to become predominant. And when that becomes predominant, then you're like a master or a guru or whatever, So that's really what's happening. So in other words, if your life is not the way you really want it, it's because of your own thinking is disturbing the basic harmoniousness that you are on the inside.
Oh, so hard. Okay, so I see. I do have one question from chat. They were saying how our bodies may not be able to be harmonious in a natural law if we continue to get toxins in our bloodstream, artificial cells in our bloodstream, GMOs in our bloodstream, things of that nature. Go ahead.
Well, that would. I just had a conversation yesterday with a person here on the exact same thing. And I'm going to speak in black and white, and some people are not going to like this, but this is the way I see it now. And I could be wrong, but this is the way I see it now. Is that everything is mind. Every atom is made up of mind force. If you follow it back far enough, everything's made out of mind. If we sit here and continue to tell ourselves, in our ego thinking, that we are victims of the heart project or the chemtrails or the poisons in our foods and the poison thoughts from our neighbors, and we're going to be victims because that's what you say you are, that's what you are. But if you say on the other side of the coin that no, I'm a master of my own fate, my mind is in charge of my life, then everything starts to change. And the people who work in the field of positive thinking training, where you can be very progressive and make things happen for yourself, and you look back in these philosophical studies that we've been doing. In fact, this morning, just before this conversation started, I posted a whole new entry in the SVP Wiki about qigong. Well, if anybody wants to know how powerful your mind is, just go in the SVP Wiki and type in qigong and watch those videos.
Can you spell that for me? I've never heard of it.
Qigong. It's one word.
Okay.
Qigong. And there's 5 or 6 or 7 videos there, and they're from all over the place. But the mind rules. And when you know your mind rules, when you know who you are, when you can say, I am, my mind, my consciousness, then you're not being a victim to all this stuff. And there are countless stories. Well, how about the placebo effect? I mean, that's one proof right there, all you need. The mind overrules the body. The body doesn't rule the mind.
Right. So even with our food, we could say it's just molecules, and our body is going to harmonize with this because they really don't exist. I mean, it's like the spoon that bends kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like bending spoons. You change the nature. You see, our perception of nature is not complete. And we think that our incomplete perception of nature is the way it is. Well, that's not the way it is. Anybody who's ever walked on a fire knows that's not true.
Right. Right. That's where it's hard to apply it, I think. I mean, I would, if I walk on fire, I'm going to feel it. If I try to bend a spoon, I'm not there. I can't do that. But at some point, there's going to be, I think both of these sides that are conflicting are going to have to come together to live in harmony. And that's kind of what I would like to do, is find the harmonics of everyone and bring them together. I know I'm crazy. Okay, moving on. Have you heard of the ghost dance, Dale? Did we speak of that earlier?
Ghost dance? No.
There's a Native American Wounded Knee, Black Elk Speaks is a very good book. It goes into it. He also did another one of his visions called Metakiosin. Highly recommend that book. But yeah, the tribe did a ghost dance because the federal, not federal, our guy, agents, military comes over and wants to have a standoff. And they start doing not even their dance. One guy moves, it's a false trigger alarm, big massacre happens. But some people that I've talked to that claim to be channelers or seers say that this ghost dance actually worked. It kind of transcended time, even though the flesh died. Is that something that would be possible to you?
I'd probably have to read that to see what they're actually saying.
Okay.
If your consciousness doesn't die, how can consciousness die?
Right.
We aren't our bodies, and that's one of the biggest problems. Everybody thinks they are their bodies. And we are not our bodies. We're using the body just as we use clothes, or we use a car, or we use anything else. We are consciousness.
Do you think that your consciousness picked this timeline to be in a body, Dale?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I came here with a mission. My mission is to bring this Keely work out to the public.
Well, and I hope you're doing a great job. I noticed that we're breaking up a little bit, and if this continues, maybe we'll try this again. But let's keep going and see how it does. Your school? Have you started your school? Is this place in Colorado, the Dale Science Institute? Is it open to anyone? Are there prerequisites? Has this begun? Are you in business?
Yeah, we're in operation. It's not really a school per se that people can just come here and register, because we don't have all the organization and funding that we need to make that happen. And we are, however, conducting research. We've got people coming in to do research. We've got metal shop and laboratories and stuff like that. And right now, today, we've got some people here that are working on a series of experiments that began years ago, as far as I'm concerned. And it may be a while before we reach where we want to go, but and we'll have, it's based on who they are. I'm not going to let just anybody come in here because there's just too much stuff laying around.
I agree. I think that's wonderful that I just applaud you. I'm blown away, really. Okay, let's continue. Well, since, you mentioned you do need funds, and everybody does. A lot of these foundations are university granted. Well, I could bet there's not, for all my listeners out there, there's probably not a lot of universities that are bending over backwards for Dale Pond, okay? So, just like Freedom Slips, Revolution Radio, we're listener supported. I don't get any pay for this. All of our dedicated hosts all do this out of the goodness of their hearts, just trying to come together and make some sense out of the I am and the whys. So I think that we're all on the same page for the most part. There's a lot of naysayers, like I was saying. I have to go through that myself sometimes when I see headlines and I hear yucky things. Okay, let's go to biorhythms, Dale. Do you think that can I change my biorhythm, or is that something that's inherent to my consciousness?
Well, yeah, in a sense, we can change. We can change our vibratory chords through our thinking patterns and our, diet and all the other things.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not locked in by fate. There may be a path that we need to traverse through our lifetime, whether we chose in the beginning or not or whatever. But we still have free will, and we can go over here and play for a while, and we can go over there and do something different for a while, but we'll come back and do our thing. And if you don't like the way your life is, then just change your thinking.
Mm-hmm. There's this one guy that is a host here who I think is pretty fascinating, and he's been studying Bashar, who is the self-proclaimed channeler. And he has this one quote that I really liked, and it says, "Shift to the one you prefer." and I think that kind of also relates to how Vin Stewart sees kymatics, or Nassim Harriman talks about just being that loving state. It's all about where you choose to be, whether you're in and the life you're going to lead. I don't know. I guess people just need to really look at this for themselves, because it didn't really make sense to me, and it doesn't really seem to make sense to me coming out. But when I studied it, I felt something. I felt a resonance there, which made me think it's true. How do you feel about the shift to the one you prefer? I mean, theoretically, could I shift myself into a different realm here on Earth, and could I shift myself to a different realm instantaneously by my molecules resonating with a different whatever it is out there, dimension, planet, whatever?
Well, it's multi-dimensionality, multi-universe, the multi-universe concept. In a sense, we have to admit that there is no limitations. If there are no limitations, except the ones we create for ourselves, then yeah, that's a very good possibility. Personally, I don't like to go to the multi-universe concept, because we got enough real-time problems here that we get to go looking at other universes to solve problems. Okay, maybe that's out there, fine. But let's look at this universe. How can we improve our life and our experience in this universe?
Exactly why I asked if you thought you came here in this timeline for a specific reason. I think I completely, wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah, well, there's so many things happened to me during this journey that it's inescapable as well. There's a lot going on here, and it's not just me making decisions on a day-by-day basis. There's a lot of motion around this mission that I'm doing. But,
I applaud you. Okay,
yeah.
Let's keep moving. We're changing our chemicals in balance. How would one begin? Like, if you have a disease, or you are bipolar, or you're biogenetically cell alterated, who knows? Or my son, he has autism. How would I, begin to take out the resonance that is not acceptable to me?
Well, two things. There's two things. One you touched on just a few minutes ago is choice. We all have choice. And most people don't, I shouldn't say that, some think that they don't have a choice, that they're victims, they're locked into their circumstances, and so they scream to the authorities and say, save me, give me something to save myself. Well, nobody's going to save you. You have to save yourself. And the way you do that is to realize that you are in command of your life. You may not really know how to do it, like a bicycle. You had to get on it and fall off a few times, but eventually you got mastery over that bicycle. Your life is the same thing. So you start learning about yourself, and you start learning to make decisions. Sometimes it takes courage to make decisions. I know I've had to have, some decisions in my life. So, you learn to make decisions, and you live with the consequence of your decisions. You made the decision. You made your bed, you sleep in it.
Yep.
So
it's hard to change. It's hard for people to change. And I think a lot of people are just so concerned about going to work and putting food on the table at night that they don't really have a lot of time to research these venues. So it may be a long time.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. You must learn that we've got this power to make decisions, and those decisions influence our life. It changes our life path. So if you've got illnesses and things like that, you look at it and say, okay, I'm in this situation because I created it. Now, a lot of people won't agree with it. That's okay. They can live whatever life they want. But you're either a victim or you're a master of your life. So you need to make that choice. When you realize that you're in a circumstance and you say, okay, I need to make some changes because my body needs some adjustments here, and what can I do? First thing is you ask questions, what can I do? You go after the research. You find out what you can do. You start making subtle changes, which will eventually become big changes, just like sympathetic resonance. You start a little bit of energy, it becomes big energy.
Would you agree?
In the case of healing, the first prerequisite, we just talked about first prerequisite. Then you got to say, you got to love yourself. A lot of the situations we have health-wise are caused by, well, they're all caused by negative thinking about yourself. And I know most people won't agree with that, and especially the AMA and the FDA and all the other government people, because they want you to be a victim. But we're sitting here saying, you don't have to be a victim. You can change this. I'll tell you a story. I had a lifetime back problem. And I saw all the chiropractors and the doctors and the x-rays and the whole 9 yards for years. I mean, like 47 years. And it got so bad one day that I could not move. I was laying on the floor, and total pain. And my mom was there, and she says, well, we need to just get you down to the hospital and start cutting you up. And I said to myself, well, that's a pretty good motivation if I ever heard one. So I started reading this one book, which is a treasure of my books. It's called Dialogue on Awakening by Tom and Linda Carpenter. Anyway, in that book, he talked about the nature of healing. And the book starts out with, the healing section starts out in the premise that you're doing this to yourself. I said, okay, I don't believe I'm doing this to myself, but I'm going to go with this idea. Because I didn't have anywhere else to go except the surgery.
Yes.
And
that's pretty brave, by the way. That was very brave of you.
Well, I didn't have any choice. I was at the end of my proverbial rope, and that's usually where the help comes in. When you give up, you give up your ego and your willfulness, and you become willing. So all of a sudden, I give up my willfulness and I said, okay, I'm willing to go along with this. And it said, it's an effect of a thought that I had. Well, I don't know what the thought was. It was causing all this pain and debilitation and everything. And so I don't really need to know what the exact thought was. I just need to change that thought or change my paying attention to that thought. So I went into a state of heightened concentration. I've never done that before or since. And all of a sudden I heard this voice. I've never heard voices before. But I didn't find it strange. I heard this voice, and the voice said, go and take the hottest shower you can stand. So I crawled across the house, got in this boiling hot shower, and stepped out. And then the voice said, we'll go get in bed, which terrified me, because last time I was in bed, I couldn't get out. So I didn't care. See, I totally gave up. And I went over to the bed, and I just fell on the bed. And before I even hit the bed, I was out. And what I thought was a few seconds or a minute or two went by. I woke up. It was actually an hour and a half. And I was totally 100% healed. Absolutely, totally healed.
Wow.
So we look back on that and it says, well, it wasn't anything magical. I didn't do anything magical. I changed my thinking about my problem.
Isn't that... It's very true. I mean, I've had something very milder, but yeah. I mean, for something you were on your deathbed and given up, and incredible. I had carpal tunnel being a florist for 20 years. This girl comes into where I work and and I'm debating at 9 o'clock in the morning whether I'm even going to say good morning to this girl or just let her pass by my area into the next, it was a grocery store, keep walking and go over to the produce area. I said good morning, let me know if I can help you. Next thing I know, she says, why are you wearing a brace on your hand, carpal tunnel? Take it off. Let's pray, and I'm thinking, what? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not even awake yet. Okay, let's do this. 5 minutes later, it was just I didn't know what it was, the Reiki, or, that her name was Sun, and she was sent from God, or what. But my wrist was done, and it hasn't hurt, knock on wood, since. So I can relate to what you're saying, and I hope all of our listeners don't give up. Don't give up. Okay, excellent. Let's move on. I've almost got all my stuff out of the way for today. Do you work with Orgon reactors, Dale?
We don't call it by that name. We're researching it by other names. It's the inner etheric energies or mind or spirit energies, whatever you want to call it. I don't like the term spirit because it has too many connotations to it. Right. So we're working with mind force, qigong, and all these martial arts are all about mind force. You go to church, it's all about mind force. Everything in your life. is about mind force.
But you like this quigong, right? I mean, this is something you would recommend for me to check into, right?
Oh yeah, it's some videos of these qigong masters demonstrating what they're doing.
Excellent.
And they can move objects without touching them, and they can stop aggressive attackers without it touching them. And it's an amazing collection of videos.
Can't wait.
You know, a lot of people say, "What's this mind force?" Because we don't know any. General public doesn't know anything about it. Well, we don't know anything about it because it's not in the interest of the powers that be that we know that we're anything other than victims and helpless and hopeless slaves. But by learning this stuff and learning what's really going on, you're saying to yourself, I'm no longer going to be a victim. I'm going to empower myself with knowledge, and I'm going to change my life, make it the way I want it. And that's
so
that's what
I'm reading between the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what awakening's all about. When you assume responsibility for yourself.
Amen. I mean, or not amen. I don't think. I try to catch myself from saying that one. Yep. Yep. Okay. So I kind of read between the lines there, and you can just say yes or no. Oregon reactors, I shouldn't really, even though I think that they could maybe neutralize or balance the resonance coming from the cell tower behind my house, maybe I shouldn't waste my time on that and try to just say they don't exist and work with thought on that, right?
Well,
Yes.
no. If there's a real influence in your life, like you know, you're being zapped by rays, you know, whatever kind of rays,
Yeah.
you have to take some kind of precautions about it. I mean, you stick your hand in a fire and you say, well, I'm going to pretend this is not there. Well, that's not very good common sense.
Exactly. Okay, so back to the Oregon reactors. I've heard that they need to actually be grounded after a while because they will build up the negative energy, even though they only release the balanced energy. Do you know if that's the case?
I would have to see what they're calling an Oregon reactor. This energy, every energy is polar that we can use, which means it's got a positive and negative side to it. And depending what the configuration of the device is, it may be accumulating one or the other polarizations or both, you know. And depending how it's put together and whatnot, so you can't really. They talk about door and or energies. It kind of makes sense with our Keeley stuff in that certain energies with certain chords in their patterns are healthy, and vice versa. And absolutely, yeah, vice versa. So if you're so efficient to create a machine that accumulates the door energy, then, you know, as I say, you got to be responsible.
I'm just completely fascinated, and really that's the, you know, I wanted to save that for the end because that does kind of personally affect me, I think, every day. So I may look into this Oregon reactors, and I'm definitely going to look into the quigong. Is there anything that I did? Oh, I know that one thing I didn't touch on that I would like to touch on, and that is your 4 singing. So I'm going to let you go, Dale, but is there anything you want to...
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. You had, and I'm sorry I don't see it here in my notes, but you had something that had like 4 A's, like names of it, and you called it, like, I think that's the Dinosphere. Am I right about that? A Dinosphere?
Well, we've made 5 dinospheres.
Can you explain what that is? That's the first time I'd ever heard of it when I wrote it down.
Keeley made, like I said earlier, 129 versions of the original Keeley motor, and those operated on principles of ether and ether physics, which we call plasma physics today. And he decided that that was not going to suffice to do for him what he was after. So he started on another tactic with these machinery, which is discovery work, and it was these Dinospheres. And he went by many different names, like globe motor, sphere motor, musical sphere, all different kinds of names, but they're all basically the same concept. And they are, in essence, a fractal of an atom or a molecule or a planet. So the forces that govern the rotation of a planet, for instance, around the sun, or the spinning of the Earth, which it's been doing for billions of years. These machines represent his interpretation of those forces. And you still there?
Yeah, yes, I'm listening. I'm writing. I'm actually taking notes.
Okay, so he built these Dinospheres as a demonstration of these principles to prove that they were correct. And they were powered by the subtle void or compound energetic energy, which is mind. So he could go to the wall in his laboratory and draw a symbol on the wall, and the motor across the room would start. Because he understood that sympathetic connection between mind and machinery. It's just like our mind and our body. So there's these connections going on. And I wanted to understand his science and physics, so I chose to work with the Dinospheres because I learned by doing, and we've learned a world of knowledge through this process.
That's how we'll save the world. If what I know, I can teach two people. What you know, if you can teach two people, and so on and so on. That's how I see it coming together. That's how I see us coming together. The only way is if everybody just shares and cares what they've picked up on.
That's right. God bless the internet.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we have it. Yay! We probably always. I figure they'll keep it. They want us all in front of it. You know, they want us all right here in front of it. But. So, do you think that symbols in themselves have meaning, or do you think that it's the thought that we give them? Like if two people, kind of like the water, you know, you put love in the water, it makes a really pretty crack. The same thing with a symbol. Like if I wrote a peace sign and somebody else wrote a peace sign, somebody else thinks it's some sort of like different meaning than I have of the same symbol. Would that affect? I mean, is it all about our thought, or is it all about the symbol?
Well, it's a little bit of both. You know, letters, the English language is made up of the alphabet, and all the words are made from the letters of the alphabet, so every word's a symbol. You know, a letter is a symbol, but a word is a compound symbol. And we were taught as children what those symbols represent, and that's kind of what they mean to us, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you just draw a symbol, like let's say Keely drew a symbol on his wall, that symbol for him activated certain portions of his brain, which excited certain thoughts, and his machines were tuned to the frequency of those specific thoughts. So it's like your remote on a TV. I mean, it worked exactly the same, only it was working through thought energy instead of magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy. Now, take for instance the crop circles. Those are all symbols. And we're not going to get into where they come from because I don't know anybody knows where they're coming from, but they're there. And certain types of symbols or certain configurations of symbols do speak to our mind. And our mind is in many different levels, and most of us only have.
Okay. Dale, do I have you? Dale, are you with us? I may have lost my caller.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, are we back?
I'm back.
Wonderful. I don't know what happened. We've lost you, but we're back, and actually we sound much better. I think they were probably just trying to get us a better connection. And if that's the case, thank you, my producer, Bo, for taking... I know it was the spur-of-the-moment thing, and I really appreciate your help. So if you're listening, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, Dale. Can you back up just a little bit? Because I think that that's really amazing stuff. Like you said that Tesla was able to start a machine by a symbol because what he thought in his mind of that symbol was the same frequency as that product or that application. Is that right?
Yeah, it was Keely, not Tesla. And it worked it works like our remote controls on your television or small, model planes and things, remote control. But remote controls today are worked off of EMF, electromagnetic stuff, radio. But Keely's symbols worked on the mind frequencies. And he understood those enough to engineer with them. And so some symbols, and I think I was rattling on with the communication broken there, but symbols can speak to different levels of our minds. And like a photograph, you look at the Chinese language or the Oriental languages in general, they're very pictorial type symbols. And they speak to the higher mind functions. Like the crop circles.
I'm sorry. Do you work with the I Ching at your facility, at your institute?
No, we're familiar with it, but we haven't been working with it.
Yeah, you seem to be, interested. I've also been trying to find out about, like, a little bit about the jinn, mythology and the jinns and what came first, the Maya or the, the Japanese or the Chinese because of the Vedas and etc. We just, you just have to, I think we just have to take it all in and see what resonates with us. That's what I do. And that's what brought me to you. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing? I'd also like to open up the phone lines. It's really early. A lot of our listeners are late-nighters, so we may not have anyone. I'm probably going to get swamped on YouTube is what's going to happen. But would you like to say anything in closing that I didn't bring up or touch on that you feel is important?
Well, there's it's a huge volume of data for anybody to learn. In fact, Keeley said that no one person's lifetime would be long enough to learn his science.
Sorry about that. That's my producer. 1 second.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what that was, but we got rid of it.
I'm not sure. It may be on the Revolution Radio end. I'm not really sure. But if we did get rid of it, we'll continue. And if it continues, we'll say goodbye. Sounds good. Okay, so sorry, continue.
So that's what I suggest. Follow your own intuition like you're doing with your studies. And just follow it wherever it leads you to. And keep studying and stay hopeful and know that you're in charge of your life, or if you don't feel like you are, you can become in charge of your life if you persist. And
excellent. If I'm ever in Colorado, can I stop by the Institute and meet you?
Absolutely. Just give me a notice of some kind so we know we're here and so that it'll work. So yeah,
excellent.
People come by here all the time.
Wonderful. I thank you, Dale, for your time. I don't see any, I did hear the phone ring, but I don't know how to pull these people in. I guess Bo's not around, so I guess we're just going to not do calls, but I may have a lot of feedback in this. It may take a few weeks for them to come around, and if they do and they're interested, would you be willing to come back one more time for a follow-up conversation?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Excellent, Dale. Okay, well, you have a wonderful day, and keep those good vibrations flowing.
You too. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, Dale.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to have to go back and listen a lot, probably, and I've taken a lot of notes, and I hope you guys have too. I love you all out there. Make today great. And I'm going to pass it back to Bo, who can put on the simulcast until noon today when we have our next live host. Thank you so much for being here. Bo?
Okay, I thought I was just producing, and let's see, I don't see any feedback from the station to go back to simulcast.
Okay, so I should just keep talking until somebody comes on and says, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll automatically go back to the simulcast or not. We can get a hold.
If you can, because it'll kick on the regular server at noon for our next live host. Otherwise, I can sit here and talk about what we just discussed and hope somebody calls in to talk with me. Either way, simulcast would be preferable.
Right, unfortunately, it looks like we're still having, Dale's call drop, as it were.
Okay, so there's no way to pick up the server, to get it back on. So, okay. you guys out there, you've been listening for an hour and 20 minutes now of Dale Pond, and he's really onto something, I think. He's got this whole love vibration within a creation. One thing he didn't discuss that I kind of wanted to is, like on Wendy, we have a new host on Revolution Radio. Wendy, she does a Granada show. She has this great guest on that will help you clear your chakras. And she says to create this bubble and take all of your negative energy and release it to spirit, to the one. And if you really look into that, I think there's some truth in that, and it may help open up. I don't know if it's a pineal gland. I don't know if it's God that's talking to you, or you think it's some alien, but it's probably just your own resonance answering from the one. So pay attention to that. Ask yourself if it is good for the whole. Is it good for you? Is it good for the whole? If the answer is yes, then you should probably pursue it. I really would like to take some callers. I don't know how to drag them in. I guess you would have to add my producer. Yeah. Not really sure how I'm going to do that. So, okay. I don't really know what to tell you. Bo, can you take any callers? Are there any callers?
Yes, anybody that's calling into the station, I can add. I can add anybody through Skype via my. You'll have to add me on Skype at Bono's Entertainment. And let's see, just to give Dale's information out again, that was, for those who missed it, S as in Sam, V as in Victor, P as in Paul, Wiki, WIKI.com. And that will take you to the landing page.
Okay, yeah, maybe I can just do a little bit of the reading on that. And then maybe I can get someone on CAT or someone will jump in and figure out what's going on. I can do that. Okay. If you go to www.sbpvril.com /GALE Dale bio bio.html, he has a bunch of links on this site which I could go over. I've tried to link in chat a few times the universal laws never revealed. It's Keeley's Secrets. That's where I found the diagrams on the harp octaves. And it's fascinating stuff. It is where it taught me that dying rock is water. And that's kind of where I started to think about this, oh God, let me get it right. It's water hammering effect, which Dale didn't really mention that so much that as I wanted him to, that this is the infinite energy. This waterboarding, he says, this vacuum, this etheric is infinite. So, like last night, Stephen was talking on his program about, through, what was his name, Mark McCandlish, about folding space, about how these big jets, this technology, maybe it's called a B-1 fighter, I'm still not 100% on that, might be using this technology, you know, like Dale Pond said. Oh my goodness, my son is home from school because of snow here, so Sam, say hi to all.
Are you talking to yourself?
Well, I am pretty much right now talking to myself. I'm talking to all the listeners on Revolution Radio. Would you like to say good morning to everybody?
Good morning.
Okay. Now, want to say goodbye for a few minutes?
Wait a minute. What's that?
That's my producer's icon. He has what is it, Sam? I don't know.
Martian guy.
It's a Martian guy. He has Marvin the Martian doing little side flips. It's very cute. Okay, real quick.
I pulled glasses.
GL.
GL.
ASS.
A-S-S.
E-S.
Yes.
Okay, see you later. I love you, Kara. Give me a few more minutes. Okay, so I'm back to the speed 1 stuff. I'm really sorry about the interruption. Are we in simulcast?
I believe he had the simulcast set to go to noon, unless we ended early. We were to get a hold of Lady Horse, and I just tried her. She's not around. And
I tried Kat. Haven't heard back from Kat either. So, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna keep rambling. I can do that. Okay, so we had this V1 last night. Stephen was, oh my goodness, P-U-R-P-L-E.
P-U-R-A-L-E.
No, P-U-R-P-L-E. And everybody knows what purple stands for, right?
R-A-L.
Yeah, P-U-R-P-L-E. Okay. Good job, kiddo.
Purple.
Yep. One more. Oh gosh, I'm really sorry. S-H.
S-H-I-R-T.
And a little tickle on the way out. Okay. Okay, so I'm really sorry. Let me get back to it. Try and get my thought out. Earthplay. Earthplay has a new show here on Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. He had a special guest, Mark Handlish, and of course our own Billy Hayes. Most informative, excellent elder. If you ever get a chance to talk with him one-on-one, do it. In the meantime, they were talking about these fighter jets and folding space-time and creating wormholes, and kind of got me thinking about the vacuum we were just talking about with the water hammering and how it's infinite energy, and maybe we wouldn't really have to fold space. Maybe we could actually just break down the molecules and zap. It's like beam me up, Scotty. Now, whether or not they would be able to coordinate some sort of destination, and then even if they probably could, then would they be able to come back home using that same molecular breakdown? It's stuff to really make your head spin. It's the stuff of sci-fi novels. I don't really know where I'm going with all this stuff. This is where this has led me. And like Jill says, it's really all just about picking, being responsible for yourself, growing gardens, realizing that maybe these chemtrails can be altered through our own molecular frequency resonation, somehow being able to pick up on maybe the barium has a certain frequency. Maybe we can tune into that and nullify it, balance it. One way to maybe do this is through these argon reactors. I would recommend them to everyone, except for that I've never made one and I'm still learning about them. Apparently they need to be grounded. If you use them, they take metals and they absorb negative frequencies and they output a alkaline or balanced energy. But apparently they build up the negative energy, and so you really need to clean them if you're doing this. I'm looking forward to the qigong, and if anyone knows anything about these martial arts and would like to educate me, I would be more than interested in hearing about it. I don't know where our other people are. We have a caller, it looks like. Miss Tammy, are you there? Hello, Tammy?
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. What's going on with you today?
Well, I wanted you to know that was a great show. I was listening to the entire show, and it was so amazing. And when I tried to call in, it appears that the phone lines are down or something. The number's not forwarded through, so that's why you weren't getting any callers.
Good to know, and hey, really good to know that someone was interested. It seems that, I looked at his YouTube videos and only had a couple thousand hits. It's shameful.
Absolutely, and he was so succinct, and I really enjoyed the entire program. I really love the concept of quantum psychology, quantum energy, energy itself, frequency, and a lot more people need to realize, what this life is, what we're experiencing, how we're experiencing it, and how fun it is. I mean, just we're to be making it fun, and rather than being in the past tense all the time, we need to be just simply being. And I found him to be so beautiful. How?
I found him online. I started reading the Universal. Oh gosh, let me get the name right. Universal Secrets. That's not it. Finally revealed. I found it on Scribed. It was I'll link it after we get off the phone. I actually have a second to go over there and do that. But Walter Russell and Leo's works were the publications of all these great scientists. Whether or not Russell was, what he was doing with these publications and who he sold them to, and like Dale Pond said, now the Keeley motor is now MIA, but at least we have the archives and we can see it, and he explained how it worked, and I would highly recommend these Walter Russell. He has the whole collection online. Absolutely fascinating.
It's amazing, and everything is written. Everything that you can imagine is already written. You just have to know where to find it. And a lot of it was hidden at the turn of the century, as you know. We had the Vienna Circle come into play, and Nietzsche and all of these others that it kind of perverted that information, and so it was stuck in secretive places, or more secretive than not, although it's still there, and people just need to look for it and realize what it is, because it's absolutely amazing and fascinating itself, and this knowledge is it's a requirement. I mean, this is what life is.
It will be. Yes, I agree, and I think it's great that you added about Nietzsche, because I don't really know at what point it got so perverted. Our language, over and over has been so altered. I used to use the word intent, like know your intent, until I looked up the Merriam definition of intent. And now I don't use intent. And then I went to resonance. It resonates with me. And then I realized that maybe it's not so much a resonance as it is, because you don't want, the resonance is the effect. You want to actually be involved in the cause. So that would be a concordance. Dude, we're welcomed here by Dude Guy. Hey, Dude, thanks for calling.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to make you, this is a great show. Good guest. I'm glad to hear about his work. I just want to make you aware, if you haven't seen a documentary called The Pyramid Code by Carmen Balta.
Nope.
She's a professor from Canada. And also the work of Chris Dunn.
Okay, I've heard of one.
Giza Power Plant. In his work and in the documentary that Carmen Balta has called The Pyramid Code, they describe how it looks like not all the pyramids, but some of the pyramids, including the Great Pyramid, looks like it could be originally, its original purpose. Over the years, it was used for other things. Original purpose was to be a power plant. And the power plant ran off of water, water and energy waves that were focused by the pyramid, and certain gases that were released into it. And if you look at the inside of it, it has no markings on the inside of it. It's designed very much kind of like a machine. And if you look at, I have Chris Dunn's books, and he's made some documentaries and had done some lectures, and Carmen Balta describes this process, and they compare it to Tesla's early work. How he designed some of his Earth antennas that were grounded in the air and drew power up out of the Earth, as operating on a similar principle. It wasn't the exact same thing, but the broadcasting system he made up in Wardenclyffe, New Jersey, that was going to broadcast free energy everywhere, was based off similar ideas. So I'd say if anybody's more curious about this, maybe look in the work of Chris Dunn and the Pyramid Code.
And I will look into the Pyramid Code. I'm not familiar with that one, but I am familiar with Dr. Sam that did is unearthing the Bosnian pyramid, and he said that it is probably one of the original frequency energy conducers, as with Machu Picchu and Pisa.
Well, there's more than that. If you look at Rand Flemath and other people that have diagrammed all these megalithic sites, they're laid out on an Earth grid at geometric locations that are regularly spaced over the planet Earth. It looks like in antiquity, far, far antiquity, the entire Earth was mapped when we had a different pole. There was a pole shift, like according to Charles Hapgood. And some of these are actually aligned to the old poles. There was a pole in Yukon. There was a pole at Hudson Bay. It seems the pole shifts at a regular amount of degrees, so you can actually chart regular angles between the current pole and the former poles. And so these sacred sites remain sacred because they shift to another resonant location. But the Chapel of Rosslyn in Scotland is one. I mean, obviously the Giza site, the White Pyramid in China, Teotihuacan in Mexico, all are sacred sites along certain ley lines. And some of these were two important ley lines intersect. In the east, they're called dragon lines in China. They create standing waves that resonate out of the earth, and they create a lot of etheric or subtle energy that these pyramids concentrate and use for different purposes.
Two things, dude. Wow, that last comment just really threw me, because you said something about I was on Google Earth and I was checking, I'm looking for safe areas, where's green, where looks good, feeding into the fear. And I noticed that if you zero in on my area pretty well into the green foresty, it looked like frozen waves. I mean, literally. So what you were talking about waves, were you talking about water waves, or were you talking about a sine wave or a resonance?
Well, these are...
Call from... To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Let's see. Let me try to get rid of...
Press 1.
I don't know what's going on here.
Oops.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we had a bit of an accident on the call line there. The thing I was talking about is standing waves of subtle energy or etheric energy that is sympathetic to sort of the earth and our etheric bodies, and can be concentrated and used to have all types of healing and energetic effects, and of course it can be used to create negative effects too in the wrong ways. But the purpose of a lot of these sacred sites was to use it for positive things and align earth energies to galactic energies, to solar energies. That's why there's things like all these are aligned to certain planets and pole stars, and the helical risings of stars, which is when certain stars rise at the same time in the morning as the sun does. And that only happens very rarely with some stars. With Sirius, it happens every year. There's a Sothic calendar in ancient Egypt that tracked the helical rising of the star Sirius, and it actually is a 365 days it rises again. So it's the only star that does that. So we have an interesting relationship with Sirius, and that's one reason it is important in the religious, spiritual works of ancient cultures. But they tried to align energies with these other galactic bodies, with things on the earth, the mirror of heaven, as above, so below. That's what they called, it's kind of like feng shui. You're aligning things, you're creating a sacred landscape, to organize energies, these higher dimensional energies that we're trying to get in resonance with. That's like the next octave up we're trying to get in resonance with, from material to spiritual, and so that we can evolve in a positive way and harness and work with these positive energies.
At some point on this, in this book that I was telling you about, the harp octaves, it reaches level 8 only, which is a radiation level, which is a death level. So it says that the fourth realm, the fourth dimension, I'm assuming maybe is the same thing. I don't know 100%. And the fifth level and the sixth level are places where we cannot live yet. Like our physical molecular breakup or whatever resonance does not resonate at those levels. But at that point, we become non-physical, but we're still alive. But apparently, if you go up to this eighth level, which you don't want to cube the metal, that's what they're calling the frequency of metal, to that point of level 8, or there is an actual death occurrence. So it's interesting when you say, to go up to the next octave. It's just, it would be nice to go up to the next level and then just kind of stay in that happy medium forever, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what challenges, are at higher levels. I think it's more about consciousness rather than materiality. I don't know exactly, it's something that requires a lot of study because, again, we're not there. We're only starting to perceive it. So what people, need to do here is concentrate on their intellectual, spiritual, mental, development, but we still have to deal with the material world. So it's finding a balance. It's not ignoring one or the other, but trying to integrate those in the best way you can so that you can master them. I call it mastering your frequency. So you have the 12 chakras, and it's a complete, chromatic scale. And that is, you've got to kind of become aware of all that before you can really, I think, advance or, however you want to call it. But it is awareness and perception and work, finding a balance. That's the concept of Ma'at. Ma'at in ancient Egypt was finding the balance. So the heart must be balanced by the sacred feather of Ma'at before you can enter the realm of the gods. So.
Do you have a favorite meditator? I mean, do you have someone that you like to, sometimes I've listened to meditations and they've taken me to somewhere else. And I've, come back going, oh, that was really nice,
Yeah, I think there's some solfeggio frequency meditations on YouTube that are quite good. Mm-hmm. Okay. I like the ones that are for spiritual order. I think that's like 932 or something like that, 972. I'm forgetting, but it's. Yeah,
that's what I did. Okay.
Yeah, that's one. Mm-hmm, that's a higher one that you're gonna, be able to attune with. The five. There's a 500 level one that is DNA repair.
Right.
That's a good one.
That's where I started. And I was actually thinking maybe I should go down and try to get more grounded and be more in the now. And
you can do all of them. Yeah. I would do one each on different days. Do one day and do one the other day. But there's some that lead you through meditations. Breathing can be important. So some teach you how to breathe when you're meditating, because that's each element carries prana, fire, air, earth, water. And so, drawing that in through air, through light, through grounding you in the earth, and through water. It's all different ways you can work with that energy. It's just in different forms. That's what the four elements really are. Is in the material forms, they are the four elements, but in the higher dimensional forms, they carry this subtle energy that, if you are conscious of it, you can work with it at this dimension.
I'm starting to realize that it exists, So, but whether or not my frequencies can consciously work with them is yet to be determined.
Well, that's why sacred spaces were important, is because it helps concentrate it, and it helps you kind of stay in a frequency once you concentrate on it a little easier. It provides a protective space to concentrate and kind of hold these frequencies so you can work with them, a little easier. That's what sacred geometry is, part of the function of sacred geometry. That's why churches are a certain design, temples, whole landscapes, If you look at the Way of the Dead and the Great Sun Pyramid in Mexico City, the whole space has been designed geometrically. And it's the same with Giza. And, look at many sacred sites. Le Chateau, the Templars area in France, has a pentacle design, taking advantage of a natural landscape. And there's many of them. It's ancient technology, landscape geomancy.
Well, two things that come out right when you say that are like, if you were to satellite Rome, or specifically the Vatican, even though it has the obelisk and it's got all these, sacred geometry things in it, the whole space that they have taken up, to me, looks like some sort of a fish. But it doesn't really have any shape. I mean, it doesn't really have, to me, any significant symbology to it. And so I find that really bizarre and fascinating.
The Vatican?
Not the whole area that they have taken for their own little city.
Well, they built over a Roman site. The Vatican is built on the Circus Maximus of Nero. There's a lot of sacrificing done there. Ironically, many Christians were sacrificed there. And there's also a underground cemetery there, an ancient pagan cemetery, which is what the Vatican archives connect to and have taken over part of, because it's about 50 miles of underground tunnels that they've stored a lot of stuff in. And of course there's above ground buildings, but a lot of it's underground.
I've heard there's like 4 different layers of this undergroundness, but I can't verify. I have no idea. And that there's even a YouTube out there that said there's a whole room dedicated to Lucifer underneath this, and they've actually got little. They've got a video. Whether or not it's real, take your own resonance with that.
Yeah.
50, what did you say? 50 miles.
Yeah, winding back and forth. They've put a lot of the ancient archives in there, like from the Library of Alexandria. Mm-hmm. They burned it down after they took what they wanted. So
I figured they gave a lot of that to Cleopatra, and then it went to the archives. But that's just my speculation.
Well, Cleopatra was the last of the Greek Ptolemies, and so they it was Julius Caesar's plan to he was going to marry her and have a child by her and create his own dynasty, and that's why they killed him. And she committed suicide, obviously. But they were going to, they were going to use her, whatever Roman family could use her to claim the allegiance of Egypt. Because that's the time when Rome was taking control of Egypt from the Greeks. The Greeks controlled it ever since Alexander the Great conquered it. It's a long, complicated story, but anyway, a lot of the for a few centuries the Romans ruled Alexandria, and the library was slowly kind of pillaged and restricted, and eventually they just got rid of it and took all the secrets back to Rome. So and that's why after that we entered the Dark Ages. This is around 400 BC. If you want to see kind of a boil down or a short kind of, it doesn't give you the whole story, but it gives you an idea. Watch the movie The Agora. This is the story of Hypatia, a 3rd AD century intellectual mathematician.
Okay.
She was it was played by Rachel Weisz, actually, in the movie. It's a good movie. To give you an idea of what the fall of Alexandria was like.
Well,
in the library. But,
I'm not familiar with the Agora, but I have done a lot of reading, so a movie might be fun.
Sometimes you'll just get a better handle on it with a movie, And
That's right. Well, I guess we have about 10 more minutes. Tammy, is there anything that you would like to say? You've been quiet.
Oh, I was just listening again, and I find it interesting. So often, so many think that these records are still held in the Vatican, although they're not. They're kept by attorney. The attorney is the original Pharisee or Pharaohs of the Sea. And these things are kept at Harvard Law, these Stanford.
Cornell.
Right. All of these, this information was never lost. They burned London in 1666 for the same reason, Oklahoma City for the same reason, 9/11 for the same reason. And what's happening is that, everybody believes that, oh, goodness, these are all lost. We'll never find out what happened, or, these are all jokes. It's always been the same attorney, same scribes, which is the media, same priests, which is whoever's perverting the word and maintaining under Babylonian theory. But, it's all there. You just have to look for it and don't accept what you're told. Oh, gee, this thing is lost. No, it's not. Why do we have this information? These things aren't lost. They're not hidden. Nothing's a secret. There are no conspiracy theories. It's all there. You start studying and you'll find out what's happened throughout history and why it's been perverted, why you're disallowed this information, why the educational system is dumbing down our children now. Why is this happening? Well, there's this very specific political intent. Politics in Greek means poly, which is many, and kratos, which means to control or possess. And what's happening is that we're in a society, we're within politics, we're being controlled and possessed. Why? Originally we're simply a being, a frequency of light. We were speaking about that earlier in the show, and I love that gentleman that was on. And in order to own that frequency or to impede it, which is the action of current side, and now we know it as currency, these things have to occur in order for us to be sheeple or to be owned by something or to be farmed by something. And the original concept is actually called ethics. If you go to the International Ethics Commission, all of the contracts are there with the FDA. The contracts are there with the Codex Alimentarius. Go to the Codex Alimentarius. Look at what you're eating that slows you down. This is somatoform, soma theory. This is the way that you're farmed. That's your feed bag. Somebody tells you what to eat so that you are not as fast as you are normally. When you're consuming carbohydrates in the amount that they tell you to eat, you are slowing down. This is exposure to oxygen. Oxygen is actually making you rust. This is the action of oxidation. Okay, the human body, we don't need this much oxygen, and people need to be aware of what's going on, why we eat what we eat, why you're being told that you should eat dead things and not living organisms, and why you shouldn't be exposed to the sunlight. Okay, we're not photosynthesizing. We're being taught that the sun is something scary. Okay, we used to live at the equator before we removed all about people. And people need to realize that is the concept of Eden. We weren't moving up into the northern hemispheres. It's cold here. It's cold. We're not supposed to be up here. We need sunlight. We need vitamin D exposure. Vitamin D breaks down directly into vitamin C. Learn about these things. Learn why we're slowed down. Why they need to impede the energy. Because there's very, very specific reasons and very, very specific intent involved here. And everybody needs to realize these things.
I agree. And I think you made up a couple of really good points that haven't been brought up here. And, one of those things is that all of this information has been compartmentalized in a way.
Absolutely. And that's called retarded by specialty. And if you go back into our history, into Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, these individuals, they knew everything. They had the ability to think and multitask. And we've been tunneled down and driven into a chute where we're retarded by specialty. We can only do one thing. We're only a psychologist. We're only a sociologist. We're only this compartmentalized scientist or this form of something. But if you go back into the history, we knew everything. Plato and Hesiod, we're teaching Hippocrates, we're teaching Socrates. And if you look through the gravitational effect, we're actually devolving. We're not evolving, we're devolving.
We've been doing that since day one, I think.
Absolutely, because we're easier to control. We're easier to control if we're retarded by specialty. Now being a jack of all trades is a common term. That's a bad thing in a lot of people's eyes. And in schools, these are Hitler youths. Our children are being maintained as ADHD or ADD.
Yep.
This was omnipresence. We're supposed to be multitasking. We're not supposed to be sat in a little box or a little cubicle or behind a little desk. We're supposed to be living here. I hear the bell.
Live it now. The show's over. Thank you guys very much for the time and consideration. Love y'all.
Be well and listen always to Freedom Slips and Revolution Radio.
Listener supported. We need some donations. Thank you. Thank you.
Listening to Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat masses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific Wartime this morning.
We are far stronger than we were 10 weeks ago.
Zero quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
You're nervous, count your toes. I'll do the mastermind around here.
You who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top.
Bam, check it out every Tuesday and Saturday on Revolution Radio. It's a double dose of the internationally recognized renegade military historian Douglas Dietrich.
You'll stay right where you are till I tell you to move.